Ready, Scott? Okay. I hereby call the 2,299th meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Our first item up is Milwaukie High School Outstanding Student Achievement Award for September of 2019, presented to David Holmes, the principal. And David would like to come on up. And how are you?
I'm good.
How are
Good
things
night.
over at the school?
They're great. This year has started out really positive, so. And I get to come back here now and show off some of our students, so I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
So this is David. We call him DJ. He goes by DJ Holmes. As I said in the email that I sent you all, DJ comes to us. He's been in leadership all 4 years. He's senior class president. He's taken several AP courses. He has just participated in the school and continues to do so. He was captain of the tennis team last year, and we had the biggest tennis club or tennis program that we've had in the history of Milwaukie last year. So I'm sure DJ had plenty to do with that, getting kids to come out. We also started a school spirit club this year called the Mustang Mob, and DJ's the president of that. And so we're trying to get school spirit up, and he came in early. They were at registration. They set up booths. They have up to almost close to 400 kids signed up for it. But he's just trying to create school spirit and bring kids in and to attend a lot of different events. And he works closely with my administrative assistant to make sure that things happen. So DJ is just a young man. Sorry. He is a young man that is just so, he's always happy. Like, what you see is what you get. DJ always has a smile on his face. He's always respectful. He's always got a can-do attitude. I mean, he is very, his enthusiasm is contagious, and we just really appreciate. And I'm going to read some of the stuff that some of the teachers and staff said about you.
Oh.
Okay?
Exciting.
All right. So I had DJ Holmes as a freshman. You could tell then that this kid had the it factor. He's charismatic, smart, humorous, and always displaying a positive attitude. He made the class better just by being in it, and that's from Mr. Bracey, or Mr. Knight. DJ definitely made me feel welcome as a new teacher. So not only is he impacting kiddos or young people, he's impacting the staff in a really positive way. He conveys a sense of community pride with such a positive and accepting way that I feel he will be a great leader in whatever field he decides to go into, and that's Mr. Murphy. I had DJ last year, but he is a wonderful young man. He's got a great sense of humor and also a strong sense of dedication. His energy is infectious, and he is extremely kind and caring. That's from Mr. Peterson, and I'll give you this in a little bit. But Mr. Lindman says, simply put, DJ is a purebred Mustang. He came on campus as a freshman wanting to be involved in every way possible. He's excessively positive attitude is infectious. I should have brought my glasses. He is a fabulous role model for us all. I had a young man who was a foreign exchange student register late for physics, and the day that he came into the class, and the day he came in, my kids were building and testing devices. I introduced him to the class and asked if anybody would be willing to bring him into their team, to which DJ jumped at the chance. He's wonderful, positive, and he's been a great experience for our foreign exchange student. And this isn't the only one that I've heard about. I've heard about other foreign exchange students that DJ has welcomed and made feel very, very good at Milwaukie. DJ is the man, and you can tell him I said that. Thanks for taking care of our kiddos, kiddo. I appreciate it. And that's from Mr. Lindman. And there's a couple more. But you just have such a great attitude. And I'm just so grateful to know you and to have you as a student and just to know you as a human being. You're just awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gelman. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are for the future, what your plans are.
My plans for the future are after my senior year, after I graduate, go on to a four-year university, majoring in education. I want to be a history teacher when I grow up, hopefully high school education. I think that high school is a very important time for young people, and, it's where, you're finding yourself, and I want to help kids guide their way through high school.
Awesome.
Excellent. Very admirable.
So is this the season where you're applying for schools then?
Oh, yes. In Avid right now, we're doing our common apps right now. So we're doing all our essays, filling out all the information. Very tedious, but very rewarding.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Well, do you have some idea where you want to go?
Either my top three schools are the U of O. I see your pin right there.
This isn't a U of O pin, but
Bad eyesight. U of O, Portland State University, or the Pacific University in Oregon.
cool.
Very good. Yeah.
Well, who would like to start today?
I'm happy to start. I had lots of questions from his.
Yeah. I'd like to know more about the leadership program that you attended in Philadelphia. I think that's amazing. And then there was one at your school. So I also want to note that we're doing something here in the city of Milwaukie, and that I hope you'll watch out for that, where we're going to be able to have youth on some of our committees, and we also have a leadership program that is going to start in just a few weeks, so be thinking about those. But tell me about Philadelphia. That sounds fantastic.
So me and my fellow ASB member, Unette Lugo, amazing person. She'll probably be up here pretty soon. Me and her attended a conference called NatStuco, where schools all over the country come to one high school, and we all, so it's a conference. Learned a lot of things about like leadership and how to interact with people and how to, Jeez, so sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
You're fine.
Doing good.
And just like learning how to better ourselves as leaders. And also we attend a state camp called OASC, Oregon Association of Student Councils, where we meet a lot of new people and we learn a bunch of new things. I know me and Unette have been using our information from nationals to to bring.
You got a soundtrack.
Oh, okay. I thought it was wrapping up music for a second. My bad.
It's like the Oscars.
This big hook that comes out.
It's not,
I love your
this is
sense
not
of humor.
Jeopardy.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, Philadelphia was an experience that I'm very glad I got to experience.
That's awesome.
By the way, he did apply for the
Yeah.
leadership.
Miss Gelman
that.
did tell me about that.
Yes.
Good.
Cool.
Good.
Right.
All right, Lisa.
Well, there's tons of things in what we were told about you that I wanted to ask you about: the tennis, the Mustang Mob, and of course the yearbook. I was a yearbook editor when I was in high school, so I'm always excited when I see yearbook editors. But tell me, just of all the things you do, what's your favorite and why?
Oh, geez. Milwaukee, or Mustang Mob, has been really impactful in my school year so far. Just like going out to all these games and just like cheering my heart out. It feels amazing because I know how our players feel about it, and they tell me, "Hey, man, great job!" And like coaches come up to me all the time, saying, "Hey, you're doing really great work," and it just brings a smile on my face. Even without the recognition, I'm still happy to do it.
Great. Great. Well, we wish you all the best. I'm sure you'll do awesome wherever you go, and I really love that you want to be a teacher. That speaks highly about your teachers and your experience with high school, so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I thought Mr. Murphy's comments that you made him feel welcome as a new teacher are just so telling. I mean, that just tells me everything that you need. I mean, we hope that all of our children grow up to be, leaders like that one day. I mean, that's remarkable, and it's, the same thing, just welcoming in foreign exchange students. I befriended a foreign exchange student who ended up living with me when I was in high school. And so I know how, I mean, not firsthand, but sort of secondhand, I know just how that experience can just be so intimidating for a young person to come into a new environment in a new country and to not feel welcome at all. So thank you for doing that. That's really, really does speak volumes about the leadership. And, it doesn't seem like you needed any kind of a conference or anything to tell you how to do that. So congratulations and thank you very much. And I see a couple of adults behind you who appear to have smiles almost as big as yours. And so I just want to thank them too for raising such a wonderful young person. And Ms. Gelman, again, for bringing us the kids, the young people that you bring every month. And I'm just so grateful to have you back, and welcome to a new school year. And thank you for once again bringing us a remarkable young person. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciated just the overwhelming focus everything you seem to have done in your high school career has on community and community building in different ways. And that's a value that I think the city of Milwaukie really has as well. And we're always looking for ways to do that better or more, I don't know, just to do it better, I guess. It's a complex skill to build community. So I'm wondering if there's some lesson you might have from your years of experience in doing that kind of leadership work to share with us.
Well, in my opinion, it doesn't really have a lot to do with leadership. It's just simply like saying hi to people and asking how they're doing. At my work, that's how I've been doing it. And, I'm closer to my coworkers now than like I can because they're all grown-ups and adults. But also just like building a community. Like, why not build a community at school when kids spend half their day there, and it's like, I want to be friends with everybody. I want to be, why not have a Mustang family, like the Mustang mob, I want to get, very connection. I love connection.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and if you do choose Pacific, I'll probably see you on campus. My husband coaches football there.
Good to know.
So did you say that he caused the tennis team to grow? Was that?
I said that was probably one of the reasons we had such a big tennis team.
That's fascinating to me. I played tennis when I was your age, not anymore. And over the years, it seems like the courts around town are emptier and emptier and emptier. And I thought, boy, this is a sport that's on its way out, which is sad because it's a great sport. And it's exciting to hear that folks your age are playing it and that it's growing again. Mm-hmm. So
there were like 35 kids on our 40.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know this year I've been, really recruiting. I'm hoping our 2020 season's even bigger than last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So
You have to go to Rao now to play, right? There aren't courts anymore? Yeah.
Sadly. But, it's exciting. It's a great way to get a team run in there, get some cardio.
Oh, there you go.
Those courts look lovely. I'm, excited to play on them.
Nice. Yeah.
They're beautiful, yeah. I was also a yearbook editor and on the student body council. So I got to go to state council, and that was fun.
OESC?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
not here. I was in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Colorado.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to meet all the young people, isn't it, that are similarly engaged from all over the state. But you are extraordinary, and like all of the students, it seems. I don't know how you keep finding extraordinary students, but
This
you
was
have a lot of
easy.
them.
It was
yeah.
like, do you have a student? Yep.
And it's really great to see somebody as broadly engaged as you are, and yet who does things well. I mean, that's hard to do a lot of things well. So I suspect you will be an amazing teacher, and I'm glad you've chosen to do that. So I have something to read. The City of Milwaukie is proud to recognize for outstanding student achievement in academics, civic engagement, and extracurricular activities at Milwaukie High School, David Holmes. Let it be known to all on the 17th day of September 2019, the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas and State of Oregon, recognized this student as an excellent example of the bright future of this community and nation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
So I'm curious if, I don't know if you knew, but we passed a resolution here at the last meeting encouraging students to engage in the climate strike this next Friday.
Okay.
And I know that was kind of inspired by a group of kids at Putnam that are doing it.
Right.
Do you happen to know if you've got any kids that are...
We haven't had kids I haven't heard from any students about that. So we're that came up today actually in our, at our district leadership team meeting. And so obviously we're gonna allow kids if they wanna have a voice and to do those things. But we haven't had any kids come forward at this point. Do you know of any kids that have come forward around that?
I know Luna did in our AP Gov class.
Okay. So, yeah, we don't have, but if kids want to come and talk to me about it, we'll figure something out.
Yeah, and let me know.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a group of kids. This is completely not city business. This is my own personal separate life as a human being.
It can totally be city business. I will just say that the superintendent has come up with a plan, I believe, for all of you to be able to allow students to not be marked absent if they stay on site. But they would have to protest on site. So that was the feedback we received to our resolution, but it's totally city business. Go for it.
Well, so some of the kids at Putnam are planning after their rally to not be on site, to go
Right.
to
I heard that this morning.
Go to the Putnam rally. And there's a few of us from 350 Clackamas that are going to meet them on bikes and ride bikes with them to Portland. So just throwing it out there. If you happen to hear through the grapevine, and it would be,
I'll let 'em know.
give them an opportunity to have some somewhat adult supervision. I'm not claiming to be a perfect. I'd be happy to be with those kids too.
I will let them
It's
know.
important to their future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How's the construction going?
Yeah, that's what I
Is it what's going on at Milwaukie right now? The construction is actually going really well. I think it's been kind of a bright spot in starting the school year. The energy is really positive with students and staff. And I think part of it is being able to, there's a couple things. One is they remodeled the kitchen and the commons, and it's not complete, but it looks nicer and fresher, and different tables and things like that, which gives us a sense of pride. And then watching this building go up, and the walls are up, and well, most of the walls. And then they have windows going in and sheetrocks going in the inside of it this next week. They redid the parking lot on 23rd, and so I think that it's really contributed to some of the positivity that's going on at the school. So that's the construction piece. I think that as far as the other things that we're trying to do this year, last year we did a lot of focusing on kind of like hearing from students and the culture of the school and trying to create an environment that was welcoming and that supported our students. And we're going to continue to listen to students because we're student-centered, and we're very much into hearing from our kids to see what their needs are. But I think now that we've had this environment, and I think DJ's been a big part of helping to create some of those things. Like when we had Making a Mustang Day, we had over 70 Link crew leaders, which is the most that we've seen. It's the most that I've seen in any school I've been at. Which
So
are
what does that mean, link
It's a
crew?
link crew. They're upperclassmen that welcome the incoming ninth graders, and they come in early and they get trained and they mentor and they set up the day to support the kids in having a nice transition into high school. So, and a lot of schools do it. Again, I've seen numbers mostly range in like 35, 40. I was shocked to see how many kids showed up to be link crew leaders. And again, I think DJ has a lot to do with that. I mean, just this class, and DJ's the leader of it, and just the energy and getting kids involved. I think has been really powerful. We just had our first assembly on Friday. It was one of the best assemblies I heard from staff members that we've ever had. So again, it was a lot of positive energy, really thinking about equity and diversity when they're doing this work, and including lots of different kids and their perspectives. So that's really nice. We, as a school, as teachers and staff, we're doing a lot of work around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we had several retreats this summer so that we could come into the school year being more prepared than we were last year. So that's been going really well, and I think that a lot more staff is getting involved as well this year, which is really nice to see. So we have an equity team that has like 18 staff members on it now, which is really big. And then we'll meet with students tomorrow. So they get to come 1 week and then staff does the other week. So I think things overall are going really well. I'm really excited. So we're working with a group so that we're going to become an equal opportunity school, meaning we really want to look at like who's in AP courses, who are we missing, who could we get into AP courses. We're starting to look at weighted grades so that kids want to take that chance, so that their grade, if they get a B, it weighs more than just getting, right? Like if they're weighted, then you get more, the 4.0, you don't lose points if you have weighted grades. So those are some of the things that we're looking at, and just trying to increase now. We're creating a culture. Now we want to increase academics, and we're doing some things around attendance and hall passes and all that good stuff. So
Great.
Awesome. You
any
guys are
questions?
busy.
Yeah, it's busy.
Cool.
So on the construction, it's all still like on schedule to be in next year. You'll be in the new school.
We'll be in the school next year in August. The administrators and administrative assistants get to move in, and then, well, in July actually, and then in August, staff gets to move in, and then we welcome kids.
Awesome.
Great.
Y'all have to come visit us.
Well,
Yeah,
be
party.
curious to get a tour eventually.
Yes, it's beautiful. I've gotten tours. I could set something up if you guys want to come and have a tour.
Yes.
You would you'd have to wear like boots and jeans, and a hard hat and all that. But
We're getting very used to it.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's beautiful. If you're in there and you walk around, it's gorgeous. It is a really nice building.
Yeah.
So
Fun.
Awesome.
All
It's
right.
nice that the construction's done across the street. Huh.
I know.
Theirs looks really good too.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So excited.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you next month.
Yes.
Have a good rest of the evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Holmes family.
Thank you so much.
All right. Next
Maybe he had a police emergency.
up,
We're good.
we have National Preparedness Month, the Proclamation.
Done by Ann Ober,
Okay.
because the chief forgot. And I get to give him a hard time about that for a minute.
I thought it was also Wilda, though.
It is.
Okay.
So I think
then,
that
Ann.
really, Wilda is the person who requested that we put this on again this month, and I really appreciate that reminder. For those of you who didn't have an opportunity or haven't had an opportunity to meet with Steve Hoffditz, he's our new emergency manager. He's actually been in the last 2 meetings talking about this and about also just safety for the council, which has been really great. But we are working on our COOP plan, and we encourage our neighborhoods to continue to become more and more prepared. This is definitely something that in an emergency and in a critical situation, the more prepared every household is, the better we function. And so if you are able to, please do start making sure that you and your family will be safe in the case of an emergency. So, Wilda, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think the proclamation pretty well speaks for itself, but I do want to note that on Clackamas County Fire One's website, there's a lot of information about preparedness and what folks can do in different situations. And then also they could just Google, preparedness. And the month this year is designated as prepared, not scared. They want to be sure that people understand what they can do and what they need and where they have to go, and whether it's like, making sure you can take your pets with you in an emergency, or how can I get in touch with a family member or anything else in any kind of emergency, So I'd just be happy to have the mayor read this, and then we'll be on record. Perfect.
I would also say, in addition to the fire district, there are a lot of sites with, there's state and, other sites with preparedness info, but the federal government's main sort of master site is ready.gov, and you can find a lot of
that's good to know.
resources there.
Thank you for that, Ad.
Yeah.
All right, a proclamation. Whereas the month of September is recognized by emergency responders and public safety agencies as the time to actively promote emergency preparedness in our communities through planned activities, events, and public awareness campaigns. And whereas the National Preparedness Month is a nationwide effort sponsored by the United States Department of Homeland Security to encourage Americans to prepare for emergencies at home, at work, and at school. And whereas Preparedness Month is an opportunity for all Milwaukeeans to prepare their homes, businesses, and communities for all types of emergencies. And whereas the goal of Preparedness Month is to increase awareness about preparing for emergencies and persuading individuals to act. And whereas during September, Clackamas Fire District 1 and the City of Milwaukee urge residents to make themselves better prepared for emergencies. And whereas emergency preparedness is the responsibility of everyone, and all are urged to make preparedness a priority and to work together to ensure that individuals, families, and communities are prepared for disasters and emergencies of any type. And whereas investing in personal and community preparedness can reduce injuries, fatalities, and economic devastation in our community and in our nation. And whereas throughout the year, the City of Milwaukee works to make our community better prepared for emergencies by adopting and updating short and long-term plans to reduce the loss of life, property, and injuries from disasters. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation of the County of Clackamas and the State of Oregon, do hereby proclaim September 2019 to be National Preparedness Month in Milwaukee.
Thank you.
Sure. I guess the next one is mine. And I think I asked to have this put on last year after LOC, where we got a really great presentation on distracted driving, and they actually had wasn't it last year that they had the
I wasn't there last year, so.
fake car? Where
That was the year before, I think.
Was it the year before?
Yeah.
And you were supposed to try and drive and text in this
Oh, yeah.
car.
Oh, they had like a,
We all died, of course. But it was just a really great reminder that this is something that's really important. This is a city that's committed itself, even though we don't have a Vision Zero per se goal, that is actually our vision, to make sure that this is a city where there are zero deaths or life-changing injuries eventually. It's why we're spending so much money on our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and our street crossings and all of those things, safe routes to school. This is a big piece of that, because people driving distracted are one of the most dangerous things out there. So, a proclamation. Whereas Oregon cities hold citizen safety as a paramount concern, and whereas distracted driving occurs when drivers engage in activities that divert their attention from their primary task of driving, such as texting, talking on a phone, interacting with passengers, listening to loud music, and reading. And whereas smartphone use, because it distracts the driver's visual, manual, and cognitive abilities, is especially dangerous for the driver and others. And whereas 60% of Oregonians use smartphone use a smartphone, and 70% of Americans admit to using a smartphone while they're driving. And whereas the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reports that each day more than 9 people are killed and over 1,060 people are injured in crashes that are reported to involve a distracted driver. And whereas the Oregon Department of Transportation reports that a crash involving a distracted driver in Oregon occurs every 2.5 hours. And whereas in 2017, the state of Oregon launched a distracted driving campaign aimed at raising awareness about the dangers of distracted driving, and whereas throughout adoption of House Bill 2597, the Oregon State Legislature has taken steps to prohibit and discourage the use of handheld devices while driving. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie and Municipal Corporation of the County of Clackamas and the State of Oregon, do hereby proclaim September 20th, 2019 to be Distraction-Free Driving Awareness Day in Milwaukie, and encourage all residents to join in this observance. And don't drive distractedly. And just so you have a heads up, our cops are ticketing for that. So, okay. Tonight's consent agenda includes the minutes of the August 6th, 2019 work session, the August 13th, 2019 study session, the August 20th, 2019 work session, and the August 20th, 2019 regular session. A resolution appointing Alexandria Feuerstein to the Park and Recreation Board, a resolution reaffirming the city's support of a co-sponsored application with Clackamas County redesignating the North Urban Clackamas County Enterprise Zone. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yes, I need to remove the first item, August 6th work session, just for a short amendment, but we'll need to discuss it separately, so I do need to remove it from the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I make a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda minus item A1, the August 6th work session minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's consent agenda minus the August 6, 2019 work session. Notes. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously. August 6, 2019 work session.
Yes, so I had pulled this last time around because I felt like the discussion of the library district didn't quite capture some nuances that I think we may want to have recorded. And I'd worked with staff, and they had made changes that went into our packet, but then I realized I had omitted, I had missed something that I should have corrected, and that's entirely my fault. But there's one sentence, which is, I think everybody on the dais got a copy, but it's in the middle of the second page. It says, you can see what's stricken. A new sentence says, Councilor Beatty expressed concern about how the county established library service areas. She wanted to use circulation data to have a better sense of what the true service boundaries are. The other sentence, which is stricken through, wasn't really exactly what was being said. So with that, if everybody's okay with that change, I would like to move to approve the minutes of August 6th, 2019 work session.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the August 6, 2019 work session. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Audience participation. So far I have items further down in the agenda. Does anybody have a general audience participation thing? Nope. Okay, then I'm not going to read that whole paragraph. Ms. Ober, do we have anything from the previous?
We do not.
Okay. Disposition of the city-owned property located at 2215 Southeast Harrison Street, the Pond House, a resolution. This is to hold a hearing to adopt a resolution declaring the property to be surplus, authorizing the city manager to sell the property and define terms of sale. The public hearing on the disposition of the city-owned property located at 2215 Southeast Harrison Street, initiated by the city, is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider the disposition of real property owned by the city. Does any member of the City Council wish to announce an actual or potential conflict of interest?
Nope. No.
Nor do I. Does any member of the audience wish to make any challenge to any council member's impartiality or ability to participate in this decision? Seeing none, this will be presented to us by our Community Development Director, Layla Aman.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Layla Aman, Community Development Director. Tonight we are here to talk with you about the action we're requesting is to adopt a resolution that would declare the property known as the Pond House, located at 2215 Southeast Harrison Street, surplus to the city's needs, and authorize the city manager to proceed with selling of the property. We are also asking council's input on defining the minimum acceptable terms for the sale of the property. The Pond House, which is located directly across from the Letting Library, directly across the pond, and abuts the pond on the east side of the pond. Its primary use, when we acquired the property in 2006, was for a meeting space that would complement the Letting Library, and was used for that purposes as well as having additional meeting space for City Hall. Friends of the Letting Library were once housed in what we now call the garage area for a number of years. Inside the Pond House, held our famous plant sale there for many years. And about 2 years ago, when the building was damaged by a car, the Friends have less and less used the space. And recently, in the last year, they did not renew their lease. The new library that we're building, and will be at substantial completion fairly soon, provides enough space for both community use and for the Friends. So the Friends actually have their own retail space in the library. They have a sorting area in the back as well. And the new library provides both a community room, a conference room, and study areas, and so sufficiently meets the needs that the Pond House served for many years. We've had discussions in the last year as we went to finance the library project of declaring the Pond House surplus because of the new library meeting these needs in the event that we needed those resources to help support the construction of that project. We feel reasonably certain at this point that we will not need to sell that building for the purpose of funding the library construction project, but as we've discussed with you as well, that the property we currently have under contract for the Advantis building, if we are able to sell this property, would help lower our costs up front for purchasing that property. So the intent of the sale of the Pond House is to support the acquisition of the Advantis space. In order to do this, in order to dispose of property, we first have to declare it surplus and hold a public hearing, which is what we're here to do tonight. Notice must also be published in a newspaper at least 5 days prior to the hearing. So we published notice in the Oregonian. It posted on September 11th, 2019. We sent a revised mailing. I would like to note that the mailing did refer to the Pond House, but the mailing that we sent on the 6th had an incorrect address, so that was corrected and sent on September 10th and postmarked on September 10th. And we've also conducted an appraisal. That appraisal was completed on June 21st, 2019, with the highest and best use at $440,000. So that being said, what we're asking you to do today is approve the resolution on surplus property to designate the Pond House as surplus, authorize the city manager to proceed with the sale. And then in addition to that, we would also like for you to weigh in on setting the minimum criteria for the sale of the property, which staff recommends be set a minimum price to meet what the appraised value is from the June 21st appraisal. So with that, I'd be glad to entertain any questions, or I can step back.
I had a couple questions. So you're saying by setting a minimum price, or setting minimum criteria, it's price. I mean, I don't know, would there be any other kind of criteria we would be setting? Just price. Okay, and wouldn't we want to I mean, we might want to have a minimum, but we might want to start higher than the minimum.
Yeah, that's why I said, I was thinking minimum would be a good starting point.
Yeah,
And then
okay.
We'll put it out to market. So we hired a broker through our process, and that broker has brokers that will work for us to help put that property out to market. It's in the city's best interest to leverage that property to the greatest extent that we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say that I thought the number seemed low to me. I don't know anything about office rentals, but I have been watching properties around historic Milwaukie residential because I have a friend who's looking, so I'm always like looking on Zillow about once a week. And, just compared to what I'm seeing out there, it seems like a low figure to me, and that, I would like us to try and make more from it.
Duly noted.
Okay. The other question I had, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, and it's probably a Denny question, but the appraisal says various things about how there's no parking on site. Well, there was, when we bought it, a garage. There was a driveway and a garage. Is that not able to be reinstated if somebody chose to use it as a residence and wanted to return it to being a driveway and a garage?
That's a great question. I would have to check with engineering because there's currently not a curb cut there, so it's an access issue. But I can come back to you and answer that question.
I'm just curious. I mean, it doesn't really factor into my vote on tonight, but I just was curious about that. And it might be something to know as we put it up for sale.
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
I know lots of people love the pond that the pond house is associated with, so I wanted to ask about, just because the boundaries, if you look at the tax lot lines, are a little weird in that area. Is the control for that pond, the dam, on city-owned property that is separate from the pond house lot? Are we selling our ability to control what happens in that area?
So I don't know exactly where the dam is located, but it is not, I believe, in the portion that's associated with the pond house. That's a great question, another one that we can follow up with more details. I believe it's on the northern end of the property.
It is, and we did confirm with Public Works that they didn't have any concerns with this portion being sold, and that they'd be able to fully maintain the services that we need at that site with the property that we own.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And if I may note for the record as well, that I did receive a call from a concerned citizen, and I think it's worth noting. This person is on the Land Use Committee for the Historic Milwaukie NDA, and had expressed some concern about not being noticed. And it is not required that we notice them, but it did hit a little soft spot for me because, as you all well know, since I've been here as your development manager, I made a point to attend those meetings as many times as I could. I have not had the capacity to do so in the last 6 months. But I will say that my new development project manager, that will be one of the tasks that person is assigned with. As we have projects, we will go and communicate that to the NDA, because that is a value that I hold dear, and I think it creates a lot more trust and transparency between the city and our partners as well. So I did want to note that, and I heard that person loud and clear, and we will continue to provide as much feedback and participation with our community members as we can.
Great.
And was there any other communication?
No,
Okay.
not to me.
All right.
Do you know, just in terms of comparing the community spaces, I know most of us have probably attended meetings in the Pond House, and there are essentially two main spaces where that can happen, the garage and the living room. Generally, I don't think I've ever, maybe can you give us sort of a sense for the capacity of those two rooms?
Yeah, I think both rooms, probably about 20 people each. That's just a guess, so I can find out exactly. The new library has a community space that can hold a minimum of 75 people seated, so it's significantly bigger. We also have a conference room that's probably comparable to the living room of the Pond House in the library as well, in the new library.
I didn't see any mention of this in the appraisal report, so I think this is probably pure conjecture, so I don't even know why I'm asking the question. But yeah, to Lisa's point about price, is it possible that the habitat conservation area overlay is part of what is sort of making that price, that minimum price, lower than what we all might expect?
I don't know. What I can say is the existing use is the existing use. And so if you're not changing the footprint in the building, the HCA isn't triggered. A redevelopment certainly would be impacted. There's a process that we had to go through with the library when we redeveloped that. So that certainly would have an impact, but I think that the appraisal that we got was a reuse of the existing structure. That's a
Well,
good
and it was
question.
before probably the city manager's time and Layla's time and your time, but the city did rebuild the deck on the back
That's
of
right.
it. And there was a whole thing about the habitat conservation area and where that could be built at the time. So whoever buys the house, you know, should have a nice solid deck and not have to worry about that for a while.
Good point, thank you.
Unless they decide they do want to redevelop it.
Right. Right.
We have a great land use process they can go through should they decide to.
Exactly.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I know the answer to the question already, so I will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through me. When you come to the testimony table, please state your name and city residence for the record. Since we have other items on the agenda this evening, I encourage those speaking to confine their remarks to the proposed resolution and avoid repetition and irrelevant information. So, Jean Baker.
Do you want to mention anything about the timer?
I think she knows the drill.
Hi.
Hi there, how are you?
To put faces to names I've been reading, and to the others, hi. It's nice to see you again.
Good to see you, Jane.
I knew something was going to happen with the pond house, but I was surprised that there wasn't more notice about it, both in our local paper, that doesn't seem to do a whole lot of reporting. I think the Portland paper does a pretty good job for Portland, but I don't see all that we need to see in our local paper. And I keep hoping that the internet would be picking up the slack if they're not doing public notice. Those things could be sent out from the planning department and administration so we would know what was going on, and it'd be a lot easier than some of the things we've had to do. But for the last 45 years, I've tracked and raised hell about notices that don't seem to go when and where they need to go. And this was another case. That our neighborhood association wasn't notified was a surprise, a real surprise. It didn't seem to be on a list of subjects that we needed to be notified about. And such an important thing to us, which that has become, I would think that the city would do well to sit down and think about the things that we use and appreciate and where we interact and that we pay our taxes for, to say if something happens here, we should be notified. So the notification process was a terrible disappointment, but I do appreciate that Ms. Amos said that it hooked on to what she thought was fair. My words, not hers. But it's time that in an administration that brags and feels intensely about democracy and all of the things that make life better for people in the place where they live, we need to rethink some of these things, how we're missing the boat. And putting public notices in the Oregonian, I remember when it used to be in the Daily Journal of Commerce, and nobody read that either. So we really do need to look at how our notice is going out to be inclusive with people and not exclusive. My next thought about the pond house is, gee, I'm sure sorry I didn't know about this a long time ago, or I would have been working toward having that used as a community meeting room different than what it has been, although it's been wonderful. We don't have a place for a small wedding if you don't want to do it in a church, a small reception if you don't want to do it in a bar or a restaurant. We don't have a community living room if you don't want to do it in a library. It has been comfortable. It's been a really top kind of place to do small things. And in our community, we do small. It's nice to have something big if we want to do something big. But the quality of that little place can't be beat. And we could rent it out. Now, I don't know what the law says nowadays about government renting. We could get somebody to have a corporation and do a little pass-through thing, or, in some way, the city could make that available for a fee to serve the public. And I sure hope before this thing goes clear down to the wire that you try to look at that as a possibility. And that the neighborhood associations weren't even asked about it, how we feel about losing it. I think that's the biggest problem of all, is that we weren't even asked. And land use doesn't mean just zoning and planning and the real legal stuff. Some of it is just, what do you want your hometown to be and have? What accommodations do you want to give for when wonderful things happen? So I would hope that you would go farther than just the simple notice. I would hope you'd go a lot more than 5 days, which somebody said it, and I think it was absolutely right. It does look like it was an attempt to just get it done, because it's been known for a long time that it was going to happen, evidently. So when it comes right up to it, we've got 5 days? I'm just flabbergasted. So that little number needs to be looked at in the process, the same as a zoning thing would be done. It shouldn't have a special, tiny little thing all of its very own. 5 days. The mail couldn't get to me that fast. We couldn't consult anybody with the city. I was fortunate. I got through, but I had to wait a day, and if there had been many people trying to get a hold of Miss Heyman, it would have been just tough beans. We need to give enough time for staff to respond if there is something that people want. So anyway, that's what I would like to see happen, and I think it's in keeping with the things I've heard about each of you, that you're really out there for the public. And I think this one slipped by, and I hope you can grab it in time to see if something better can be done. And by the way, the crummy old house next to me, the black one, the big 1800s black one that needs to be worked over again, went for more than they're asking for that house. So you're right, it is too low. 440,000 is there. I haven't heard of anything in between 21st and the freeway and the expressway over here and Washington. Nothing that cheap. Nothing. Not even the little houses. So I would like, if it's going to be sold, for God's sakes, get what it's worth.
We will definitely negotiate as good a deal as possible. Thank you.
At that 440 start, I mean, if I had 440, I would say sold right now. And it would be a meeting hall. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Jean.
Thank you for giving this the attention that I know that you want to give it.
Yep.
Thank you.
So anybody else want to testify on this? All right. Does staff have anything they would wish to add which addresses questions raised during the testimony?
Just one comment. I want to thank Ms. Baker for coming in, for her comments and her time on the phone with me yesterday. Really appreciated her input. I do want to also explain that one of the reasons that we do also want to get this property declared surplus and sold is we would like to get property back on the tax rolls. So if we are successful in closing on the future City Hall, that will be taking that property off of the tax rolls. And so in the interest of ensuring property taxes are being generated, that was one of the main reasons we were looking at getting this property back onto the tax rolls as well. That's my only response.
And also, I mean, it was probably in your staff report, but I don't think you actually mentioned it tonight, which is that it's reducing the amount of debt we have to take on for the City Hall purchase.
That's right. Anything that we can come up with cash-wise allows us to take out less debt for the acquisition. And so that's the direction that we're trying to head.
I think the only other piece that I would add is we talked about meeting space tonight and the need to have different sizes of space, and I appreciate Jean bringing that to your attention in our discussion. We are also in the new City Hall. Part of the goal has been to get additional spaces. We didn't talk about those tonight, but they do include 2 more rooms that are similar in size to the current front room of the Pond House, as well as then a new council chambers that's substantially bigger. So we're diversifying the size of the number of rooms we have downtown, as well as making those available to the public. So where I think the city manager was several years ago when we purchased this building was that we really didn't have anything. And where we will be after the construction and purchase of this new City Hall is a substantially different place with 6 meeting spaces for community members that just didn't exist in the past.
The final thing I would add to is the appraisal. So appraisals are generally can be lower, quite frankly, than a market value. So they're different things. Appraisals, just for the public's benefit, are used so that banks can understand when someone is taking out debt or financing a property that the minimum value associated with that property given its use. So the minimum we would look for is what the appraisal is. We certainly will try to leverage the property to the greatest extent we can.
Can't there also be problems, though, when the appraisal comes in too low and the offer is actually substantially higher? So doesn't a bank sometimes then withhold lending?
Yeah, it depends on how much equity that the individual or corporation puts in. So traditional housing financing, for example, a conventional loan is typically 80% debt to 20% equity. So that becomes less of an issue if there's more equity put into it, but that's absolutely correct.
So does that mean then that I mean, crystal ball, sorry. I mean, because it's not just a residential use, it also does have office, and there was limited community, I believe, as well. So it's sort of a hybrid zone.
Yeah.
And so do you think that might, well, I guess my question is really more about not only the type of purchaser we might end up with, but also the use. Do you see it becoming a residence again, or is it probably more likely for all of the limiting factors that we've already discussed?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit crystal ball, but I would agree. I think it is more likely to be a commercial-oriented use, given its location and context. The large building to the north is also a commercial use. It was formerly a house. But because residential is permitted, we certainly can't limit it at that. I think that I would engage with our broker to get their expertise on how we would market it, but I think based on the appraisal and what we know of the market down here, that I would see that as being more successful as a commercial property, and so we would likely market it as such.
And sorry, then the follow-up question is, does that influence the kind of financing and also the price, and in which direction?
Yeah, the financing for commercial debt is different. I don't know what the difference in price would be. I think we would get a more competitive price for commercial use. And that's, again, what the appraisal pointed out, is that office would likely be the highest and best use because as a residential property, it's a very public space.
Right.
I've often thought as I'm working in the Pond House, looking over at the library being constructed, people would just be staring right at you, which if you're working, that's fine, but maybe if you're eating dinner with your family, not so much. But, yeah.
And there's nothing in the current zoning that would preclude use that did provide something like an event space or what have you. That zoning, it's a weird zone.
Yeah, it's not downtown mixed use,
No.
just so I'm correct.
R1B.
Could there be parking problems, though, with that? Because there might,
They would have to,
like that.
Yeah, you might have to contract
have
with
some
Waldorf
minimums.
or something to
Yeah.
mitigate that problem.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
the
R1B.
Yeah.
The appraisal says that, like the city will be amenable to rezoning for other commercial uses or something. And, I mean, maybe if that's true, then maybe that's also true for that kind of event space. I doubt that event space is allowed outright under that zoning, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my guess. So it is R1B, so it wouldn't include commercial as in traditional retail or anything of that nature. It permits office, residential, and limited conditional neighborhood uses, which I don't have the table before me, so I won't try to pretend I know exactly. If the potential buyer wanted to purchase it, once they acquired the property, they could potentially go through, it would be a comp plan change and a zone change to do something different than that. That's my understanding of the process.
Okay. Sorry, I do actually have one more question, because I think it was only mentioned sort of passingly. The reason why the notice happened the way that it did was because it's a surplus sale and not a land use hearing.
Yes.
So would you mind just sort of touching, just so that the broad folks listening from home actually have a better understanding? I'm sure that you've had these conversations with others.
Yeah. So the code, the municipal code that I'm referencing in section 315015, and that requires notice in a newspaper of general circulation at least 5 days in advance of prior to the hearing, and then notice shall be given to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property.
Okay.
So those are the minimum requirements.
And what would it take to add another item to that requirement?
Just amendment. You would amend the code.
Okay.
Well, and I mean, I think Ms. Baker makes a good point about the questionable validity of newspaper. That was, and I remember it used to always be the Journal of Commerce and the Oregonian often for some of these things.
We have a legal requirement under state statute on that one, so that one is a different situation that we have to publish. And we are somewhat limited in the state on where we can publish.
Yeah.
The council actually sets that at the start of your council. So
That's right. Every January. Yeah.
And it's actually
Adopted that.
3. It's the Oregonian, the DJC, and the review are noted as papers of circulation in the city. Yep.
And it was in all 3 or just in one?
Just in the Oregonian.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
To close the public hearing.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Public testimony portion of the public hearing on the disposition of the city-owned property located at 2215 Southeast Harrison Street is hereby closed. Is there council discussion?
I want to make a note while Jean is still here that actually in conversations around the library and just noted, just how beautiful the scenery is, through the new plan and overlooking the pond from the opposite direction. It was mentioned a few times that the space could be, a lovely venue space. So I'm also interested in knowing if there are any obstacles obstacles there that the city might face in terms of, receiving rent. I don't imagine that there would be, but I think that it's an interesting question, and I'd like to us explore.
For the library?
For the library.
We are actually looking at that question right now. So Katie and I have been looking at space use as an issue. She's actually right behind you, Jean, but that's, so we are having that discussion. We have been trying to make sure that all that is prepared before we open the doors. We can talk to you about that at a future date.
Okay. It was more of just sort of a comment and a recognition that it is a lovely,
it's beautiful.
lovely space. So,
And actually, once Scott Park is done, that may be a different discussion as well. We have the amphitheater down next to the water, and that space is currently a priority of NCPRDs for master planning this next year.
great.
Well, I put it on the parking lot of things to do. I utterly agree with Jean that this should be, that when we are disposing of properties in neighborhoods, that the NDA should absolutely be informed. So let's just write up that amendment so we can bring it back to council.
I'll add it to your list of ordinance.
To do.
And
It's a long
sometime in
list.
the next 3 years, we'll get to that.
Yeah, because I was surprised by that as well. But and I know, even though we all have been talking about this for 3 years, it feels like longer than 3 years, but I think 3 years is about right. Yeah.
Yeah, technically about 2 years ago is when you made the motion. Actually, you did vote to allow for this process to begin 2 years ago.
Yeah, that we've been talking about it since we were considering selling it in order to be able to pay for the library. It's kind of been in all of our consciousnesses, but if you weren't paying particular attention to the library process, you might not have caught that. So I think this is a good point. It's, we're having to do this, sell a couple of properties to be able to facilitate the new city hall concept, which has been needed, as everybody who's lived in the city for some time knows, for over 20 years, space-wise. And we have this extraordinary opportunity to get space at about half the cost of what it would cost us if we were building a new building or adding even a floor to, say, the building across the street as the city hall. So it is a little painful to lose a charming little piece of property like that. But I think those are the kinds of hard choices we make sometimes in order to facilitate bigger, more important things, where we're going to have a city hall that will be structurally sound in an earthquake and will facilitate all of our staff in one place instead of having people spread all over the city, and a much larger council chambers and a couple of meeting rooms to boot for the public. So we get a lot out of the trade for losing this charming little house. But I understand the angst. Any other questions? In that case, I would entertain a motion.
I move for the first and, wrong one. I move to approve the resolution to declare the real property owned by the city of Milwaukie located at 2215 Southeast Harrison Street, tax lot 11E25CC00900 and 11E36 BB01600 surplus, and authorizing the city manager to sell the property.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the resolution to declare the real property owned by the city of Milwaukie located at 2215 Southeast Harrison Street, tax lot 11E25CC00900 and 11E36 BB01600 surplus, and authorizing the city manager to sell the property. Is there any further discussion? I guess the only question we didn't touch on during discussion, since I have this last second, is do we want to set any other minimum?
Right.
I was about to say that.
Okay.
Well, isn't that separate from this?
No.
No.
It's
Built into the resolution.
The resolution is
Yeah, I don't
very
see
short.
the-
I
It
don't
doesn't
think
call
it's
a
in-
number,
Yeah, I
but
don't,
I guess this is,
No, but I would agree that if we could stop the vote for a moment for further discussion, and if you could talk about the criteria that you would like, if you would like additional criteria, and staff can come up and we can answer any questions.
I mean, if we put something greater than the minimum on there and it doesn't move, I would be concerned about that.
Any restrictions that we place typically are going to also reduce the value. So it's just something to keep in mind.
right, well, that's two different questions. One, restrictions that we place on it, and whether we're okay with the minimum being the
The appraised.
appraised value.
Right.
Yep.
So could we put some sort of bumpers on it? You know, if we kick it up to, I am pulling this out of nowhere, 550,000 as our minimum, and it doesn't move after X number of weeks or months, we authorize dropping the price, or?
Well, I guess I thought the
I don't know how to
conversation we had with Layla before was saying we'll set it at the 440, but they'll start asking
More than that.
600 or 550 or whatever.
right.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
consult with
that's what I
our
understood.
broker and determine a market price is what we would list the property at.
I take it all back. Great.
Yeah, because different appraised value, different than market value.
Yes.
I mean, our minimum that we say today does not
Does not
does
mean
not
that's what's
equate
going on
to
the market.
what the
Yeah.
price is put on when it's put on the market.
or what bidding might do.
Could
once it-
change dramatically.
I guess my question is really about sort of timing. If there's something, you know, if it's not moving, you know, do we need, I mean, this doesn't have any sort of terms or, yeah, okay.
So in terms of timing, we have ways that we can fund this and then back fund. If we need to, we would have to come in. We have a plan to see you in October for a budget committee meeting. That's where we'll be talking about the funding structure. And if we need to basically loan ourselves money while this is on the market and then pay ourselves back, there are ways that we can do that. So all those things are an option. I wouldn't want you to not give what you need out of this building because we have to go fast. We're not under that kind of pressure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All right.
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard? Let me see if I have...
So that vote, that motion did not talk about the price. Do we need a separate, I mean, we talked about the price, but the motion
Right.
as
Yeah, the
made
resolution
does
doesn't
not. And nor does the resolution. So, and the motion was to endorse the resolution, basically. So do we need a separate vote on the price?
I don't know if Scott was
Sorry.
listening.
Underneath, at the bottom of the resolution, hold on one second, because we actually had this discussion with staff, and authorizes for the minimum term set by city council. So you actually did set that. You just
Okay.
told me what
Just by
those are.
having the
So we're
conversation.
actually covered
The
in
minimum
this.
terms are at
Okay.
least the
Okay.
appraised value.
Because we wanted to do this in a single meeting, so we could put it on the market. We didn't know what your terms would be, so we didn't want to include them in the resolution.
Right. And we clarified all that with Layla.
Correct.
So we're good. I'm good.
But I heard you clearly, as did Layla.
If I didn't say it, it passed unanimously. All right. Our next item is dangerous building code amendments and ordinance. This will be introduced by our building official, Samantha Vandegrift, and our code compliance coordinator, Tim Salyers.
I'll drive this out. You'll see over me.
Okay, moving back the other way now.
It's more fun that way.
We like
I was going to say, he could be Sam. It would be a little weird for me to be Tim, but Samantha Vandegrift, the building official for Milwaukie. So we have a little presentation. And I have to give kudos to my staff because she did this for me because I've been insanely busy. So
All right.
Getting the buttons down.
Oh, thank you. The Dangerous Building Code is the mechanism we use to ensure safety for our residents in extreme circumstances. The update that we're looking at doing tonight will enable us to move forward with the abatement of buildings that represent a life safety hazard. So this is one of our lovely structures that we have currently in Milwaukie. I've had it posted for a year and a half now.
Or more.
And this currently meets our code. It's boarded up, it's posted, and they do not have to move forward with doing anything else with this building. So the loophole that we're looking at closing would allow us to put this into the nuisance code and move through that process. We strive to maintain a safe environment for all residents in Milwaukie. This code gives us a path to address some of the more complex issues that can happen with a structure over time. This one, Malcolm and
29th.
they raised the building, and we're going to build this floor underneath and maintain the original building, and that did not happen. It twisted and came down, so we had to go out and post it using this dangerous building code to keep everybody around safe.
Really large crow landed on it. Yeah, more than normal size crow.
I rode my bike past that like a dozen times, and I kept looking at that going, really? That's how they're holding that up? While I was blowing away.
It was the lower structure, the new lower structure held it up. So it was really well built. The new stuff was really well built.
It did, yeah, it didn't damage the lower structure at all.
Wow.
When it came down, but it really,
Yeah.
so
And they fixed this problem very quickly.
they did.
Because they had it like propped up on something that was insufficient to prop it up?
They don't know why exactly it twisted, but it wasn't, didn't just come this way. I mean, it just, it was something, yeah, a large crow, who knows?
So when you explain a little bit more about the, what you mean by you posted it and then we have no way to make them tear it down is basically what you're saying.
No, if they secured the site and after I had posted it, no, we couldn't make them move forward. They could secure the whole site. This one was it would have been a little more than just boarding up windows and stuff. They would have had to put a fence around it and everything, but if they had fenced it completely off, we wouldn't have had any mechanism to
like
use.
that.
Yeah,
It could have stayed like that for
forever. Yes. So they moved on this really quick. I mean, I went out and posted it. It happened one night. I posted the next morning, and within 2 days, they had it completely cleaned up and done. But we did have children from, curious kids.
Oh, you wouldn't have been able to keep me out as a kid. I
Yeah.
would have been.
Tramping through it. So we posted it right away, and that actually allows the police officers to go in. If they see anybody on site, they could ask them to remove themselves. So how we learn of these, complaint driven. We get calls to the police. That one where it twisted and came down, they called the cops because they heard huge noises around the neighborhood. Do we get them monthly? I think we get monthly notices from the Clackamas of anything that burns in our jurisdiction, because oddly enough, people don't notify me when their house catches fire. So I find out about those after the fact a lot of times. So we do get a monthly email from Clackamas Fire District 1. And then nuisance calls to the police. And then visual noncompliance. If Tim and I happen to be out and see something that's egregious, then we will address it with the owners. When this code is applied, 90% of our cases are unoccupied houses without sanitation or water. Tim gets notified every month when we do shut-offs.
If somebody hasn't, if a bill has gone unpaid for 10 days after they're shut off, I get a list from Water Department and just to go see if anybody's still living there or anything like that. And so I investigate those types of cases and try to make sure that transients aren't getting into vacant structures and different things like that.
And we do, if we have a house that's without water that we get notification from the police that they're having transient problems, we will post those because, again, the cops then have the right to go in. They don't have to try to get a hold of somebody. They can say, this has been posted, nobody should be on site. You need to remove yourselves from the property.
A lot of the time with foreclosures, you don't know where the ownership is at. By us posting the property, we become the victim of the trespass, and we don't have to go find and try to figure out a victim. So it's a much easier tool for us to use, and it's more effective. We've had very good success with this. We started this program, this particular part of the program, it's been probably 6 or 7 years when we had 130 foreclosures in town. We were using this quite a bit just to make sure that things weren't happening that shouldn't be happening at those particular houses.
And then the other 10% is split between the unoccupied houses that are in danger of falling, like the 2 you saw before, and then the occupied houses where life safety is an issue. This is another one of our lovely places in Milwaukie. Unoccupied, we post it as a dangerous if it meets the definition of the dangerous building code. And then if it's occupied, we work with the individual to try to bring them into compliance, eviction being the very last alternative. So we have a nice little flow chart for you. So visual complaint or one of those other complaints, Tim or I do a site visit, talk to the tenants, talk to the owners. If it's unoccupied, we will go ahead and post it. If it's occupied, we go through various steps before we ever get to a place where we post it. We notify the owner. We work with the owner to verify that if the problem is solved. At any time during this, if it gets solved, then everything is good and we don't proceed any further. We offer resources if they do need to be removed or if the house is at a point where it's just too dangerous to live in. We offer them various resources to try to help them.
What are those resources?
Click one more for me.
We're not quite there yet, but.
Oh, I have one more. I have all of these different, we have a bunch on the City of Milwaukie site, Volunteers of America, Cascadia, REACH, Oregon Housing, Catholic Charities is a good one that they really help out people to try to, sometimes just to help them clean stuff out. Because sometimes it's an unsanitary condition versus the building's falling down. So we really do try to provide them as much resources as we can to help them get their situation taken care of.
Thanks.
And so when you see the occupied ones, the 5% that are occupied, are they typically owner occupied or are they often renters?
The 2 that I've dealt with have both been owner occupied.
Owner occupied.
The one gentleman, we offered him senior services and he did not take us up on any of those. Tim even made the effort to call himself and try to get this gentleman help, and he refused to help. He ended up moving in with his daughter, but it was not a good atmosphere to be living in. So. It is the property owner's responsibility to ensure the property is safe, sanitary, and meets code. It is not the responsibility of the tenant to improve or maintain the building that they don't own. Codes protect those who can't protect themselves. We do make sure that the owner is made aware, and the owner is the one that is responsible to bring those up to code. So if and when we move through any type of code enforcement process, it is against the owner. Questions?
I don't have anything.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't even have a script on this. So I have 2 people who have asked to speak. So Nancy, come on up. Oh, you can both come up together. That's right. You asked if you could do that. Please come up. Make it
You'll give him 5.
6 minutes. Thanks. State your name and city of residence for the record, please.
Nancy Watt, and I'm a resident on 12489 Southeast 43rd Avenue.
You're going to need to pull the
Probably be
microphone
closer to the mic if you can.
Yeah,
Either you closer or bring the mic to you.
Bring the
one or the other.
microphone closer. Just bring the base of it closer like that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Justin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sue.
Go ahead, Sue.
My name is Sue Richardson, and I live at 12326 Southeast 43rd Avenue off Lake Road.
Okay. And I'm going to give you guys 6 minutes to tell us what you want to tell us.
You want to go ahead first?
I live across the street from this burnt house that's been there almost 2 years. And it's dangerous. It is an eyesore. It's not good for the property value of my home. It brings it down, and it could be, rodents around there, transients. It's just an eyesore, and it needs to be torn down or something done.
As I mentioned, I've been a resident there at my address for 27 years now. So I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of things that have happened in that area. Mostly been very negative, to be honest with you. And I want to say to the mayor, to the board here, and to the other city officials and to Tim, how much I appreciate all the work that you have been doing on the draft for the dangerous or unsafe buildings area. That is, I really, really appreciate all the help that you guys are trying to do on this. It's been this situation we've had here since last August, since the house burned down, has really devaluated, I feel devaluated a lot of our property value in our area. And it's really also caused really a breeding ground for the homeless, for unsanitary conditions, for rodents to appear. I've had 2 rats, dead rats in the back of my yard in the last few months. I've been there for 27 years, and I've never had a problem before. And also then and also homeless, and just the devaluation of property and the type of people that when you have a situation like this, that it encourages people to come there and have temporary housing. So I am really asking all of you to really help myself and Nancy and the other homeowners that are there to try to change the code where when we have a situation like that, that it is that the property will be torn down or remodeled so that it would be an acceptable place to live. I have contacted the city and Tim for many years on many violations on the owner of that property. It's been numerous violations that I've had to deal with, and it's taken so much of my time and personal energy to try to make things better for my neighborhood, that any help that we can get to try to get something established will be just really greatly appreciated.
So I assume the person that was living there is not currently living there.
Well, those 3 homes are owned by, as far as I still understand, by one owner. They were built by one owner, Mr. Lowell Whitkey, about 20 years ago. And originally those homes were, I believe, sold to people. And then about 2008 or 2009, when the crash hit the housing, at least 2 of the homes, I believe, the owners could not afford to keep them, so then he turned them into Section 8 housing. So at least 2, if not 3, have all been involved with the Section 8 housing program in the last several years. And there's been numerous issues going on with at least 2 to 3 homes there of his homes dealing with different issues as a result of having Section 8 tenants and other renters that have, destroyed the property, and it has caused problems. garbage issues, trees that have not been properly trimmed and they've fallen on the sidewalk, trash, loud tenants there. The police have been called before on previous tenants there. So there's been multiple issues going on there for years and years.
Yes.
I mean, Nancy can back up with what I'm saying. It's just been one thing after the other.
That's right.
It's been just a very, very, very discouraging situation for us who are.
And the owner is not trying to sell the house or rebuild the house. He's just.
I don't believe so. Tim would know more about that. I really don't know about that. All I know is that he was dismissed from the Section 8 program because of his lack of compliance. And now they have two tenants in there now in the other two properties. I don't believe they're in the Section 8. And then there's that one house that's, not habitable. That's been the real question so we're hoping that if an ordinance would be passed, that the structure would be torn down as soon as possible, or that it would be, conditioned where it would be habitable.
Okay, thank you.
He's also in front of that burnt-out house. There's a car there that's been sitting there for months, and other garbage, lots of garbage and trash.
Okay.
The vehicles have been parked there on the property for months. Took months to get rid of a few vehicles that were on that burnt property. Just numerous issues. I mean, it's been horrific. It really has.
Thank
And
you
it's
both.
been so, the problem we have there where I live in that area is that there's only 2 or 3 people like Nancy and myself that seem to have been really active in trying to address some of these issues. I live in a neighborhood that's very apathetic. The people don't want to get involved. They don't want to take the time. So Nancy and I have been carrying a lot of the weight on trying to work on these issues for a long time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
So, Tim, can you come back up? I got a couple questions. So, I read through this, but remind me, assuming we pass this, do we can contract to have it taken down, assuming it's not fixable, and then put a lien on the property? Is that or do we, that's sort of the last resort kind of thing?
Correct. That's what we've been missing. And that's what this code will do. We'll fix that situation. As long as they boarded it up, it made it in compliance. But now, boarding it up just isn't good enough. It is for 180 days. But after that, it becomes an abandoned building. And then that's a violation of our code. And then we can work through the nuisance code as far as abatement goes.
And we'd have to start the 180 days, or the existing time that's already gone by, which sounds like it's more than a year.
I have not posted this one, so we would have to start the 180 days.
Yeah, and it's from date of declaration. So,
And will this take effect immediately, or is this a 2-week kind of a?
I think we made it effective immediately. We can look.
So a lot of those issues that she was addressing, though, they're not part of this dangerous building code. They're in the nuisance code,
Right.
but they're not part of the burnout definitely would be part of this.
burned out house would be. And just like some of the
And
other
also those-
shots you were showing, the other places throughout the community, it gives you the opportunity to act on those where you haven't had that in the past.
Correct.
I'm going to defer to the attorney.
The ordinance, as it's in front of you, does not have an emergency clause. However, you can
We could add one.
declare it an emergency and we can amend it. for you.
And that speeds it up by 2 weeks or a month?
I believe it's 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
and the other enforcement actions regarding vehicle or junk and debris and trash, those actions have been taken.
So they've
Not resolved, but
right,
taken.
They've been noticed and all that good
Right.
stuff, right? Yeah. Thank you.
We've gone through as far as we can go without abatement.
And I will say that Mr. Wiki has been into planning to talk to them about doing various things with this property, but it was probably 6 months ago, and he was talking about maybe multifamily, which it's not zoned for, and different, but he did come in and talk to somebody, but then there hasn't been any activity since.
Okay.
Well, so on the ordinance itself, I sent you a model. There's a more recent model that the federal, or not the federal government, it's the International Code Council uses, rather than this 22-year-old one that they haven't been updating. I mean, I get that. I guess I have some frustration because, I will say when Shane Adman was on the council, he thought we should have a schedule for revisiting all of our code and updating, set out a schedule over 3 years or 4 years or something. And we're going to be revisiting a lot of it anyway. But I was never necessarily an advocate for that. But I do feel like when we're revising code, we ought to, we ought to make it the best it can be. And in this case, we aren't having to create out of whole cloth. There is this other code. I get that it's not part of your job typically to write code. I think the planners write code. Tim has had to write code, I guess, sometimes, and the engineers occasionally have to write code. But I think, one of the things about hiring an attorney in the city is that I felt like hopefully the attorney would be helping write the code. And I look at this code versus the one I've sent around to the counselors, and I think about it from my lawyerly perspective, and I think it's like probably 2 to 3 hours of work for me to take this code, this better code, and then see what needs to be fit in from our code and come up with a red-lined code. I don't think it's a huge lift, and so I'm somewhat disappointed that it didn't happen. I will probably dissent on this code, not because I don't think it's important, but just because I think we have to do better when we're revisiting our code. And I hope, so at that point, it probably doesn't matter if you pass an emergency clause, because it has to come back in 2 weeks anyway. Although, well, maybe you still want an emergency clause. I don't want to prejudice that. But yeah.
So I have a question for you then. So this, the boilerplate that you sent around, as I understand it, there is no city in the state that's currently using that.
I have no idea.
That we have found. I just don't know.
Well, I suspect cities are using the bigger international, the whole package, the bigger one that I sent you guys, which is the property maintenance code. I would be very surprised if there aren't some cities using that, but I haven't done research on that.
I have to express some dissent with, and this is just a difference of opinion, I think, more than anything, but I don't think that the highest and best use of our staff's time is to any time we are asked to do an emergency fix on code to prioritize making that code as perfect as we possibly can. We know that in January we will start to really dig into code. I think that is the time where we all will have the focus and the bandwidth and the expectation of staff that we really step up to the plate and do that deeper work. I do not think that it's a reasonable ask of staff to receive a very large body of text, digest it, and try and figure out how to make our code perfect when all they're trying to do is address some very specific situations where people are struggling in their neighborhoods.
Well, we'll disagree, because this was only 3 pages of text. It was not a large body of text.
No,
The whole property maintenance code was a large body of text, but this section was 3 pages of text.
Yes, but that 3 pages of text is in the context of a much greater work, and I don't think that it's reasonable to expect staff to only read those 3 pages and feel comfortable saying, okay, let's change these things, particularly in the context of the entire state not really being able to find anyone else who's using the code that way. That is a much bigger question in my mind.
Yeah.
Why isn't the rest of the state using this? What are the other barriers? There might be some very good reasons that wouldn't come up if you are only limiting yourself to reading those 3 pages of text. And I want to, if we're going to really try and perfect the code, then I want to treat that seriously and make sure that it's in the work plan for staff to have the time and the capacity to do that research.
I think it's important, too, that for 2 work sessions, we had worked with staff on the wording of this particular part of the code. And while there
Did we
may
have
be
2
something...
work sessions?
No,
it was just one.
7 minutes of one.
No, I thought there were 2.
No,
just where we had it, and I apologize. Yeah. But while it may have been great information, that Councilor Beatty was passing around, no doubt it is, but none of us had even had a chance to look at that or vet it, nor had you prior to that being sent around. So we still would be weeks off of being able to do anything. And since we are going to be going through code in detail in January, I agree that, we can look at.
Well, I think in October we're going to get an opportunity to prioritize how we approach code. I was not under the impression that this kind of code was going to be in the code we're revisiting. I mean, it's largely zoning code.
Good news is that as you have all talked to me for 2 years, I've been making a list of code revisions that have been requested of me. So things like billboards, the tree code. We have a number of codes that wouldn't have necessarily been a part of the comp plan rewrites, but I asked you to hold so that we would have the feedback from the comp plan before we would make additional significant changes to the code. So we've been keeping that list. We've added these things, but it's part of what's making that process so long. And I know we sort of joked earlier about how long it would take to rewrite a small portion of code for another ordinance that we're working on. But it's because there have been so many times that I've had to say, we need to do this once we're done with the comp plan, and we've really thought about where we're going. So yes, in October, we're going to start doing that. And part of the reason we're doing it in a sort of thoughtful process like that is because the same staff are going to be involved over and over and over and over again. And so I'm trying to make sure that those staff don't get pulled off of projects as they are focusing on something else. So for instance, yes, these 2 individuals have done a fabulous job tonight, and I really appreciate how much time and effort they've put into this. But they will also need to pull in Denny. They're going to need Justin as they go through these, just to make sure that all of our codes are speaking to each other correctly. And we've had a few issues where planning or building have made changes, I'll put it that way, to code that then the other team gets really frustrated about because they weren't a part of that process, and we end up having to go back and clean it up later. And that's happened twice since I've been here. So this isn't something that never happens. It's something that's really critical that the full team looks at the codes, thinks about what we're changing and why we're changing it, and then moves forward. I think the second piece that I do just want to call out is that I actually talked to staff about what Councilor Beatty sent around, and they think it's very good. Not just the section that she liked. They think that could be a better code for us to look at in the future.
Yeah.
So we actually are, what I'm recommending, what staff's recommending isn't that we only do the little piece. It's let's look at whether or not this better suits the needs of Milwaukie today and actually going through that full code.
Yeah.
And so I understand what you were asking, but I also understand that to make sure the code all speaks to itself and to each other, that's why we wanted to wait, is so that we could look at the full document.
Well, and and merges with state law.
Right,
Because
yeah.
if nobody else in the state is using it, we don't know whether we
Right.
might get crossways with state law. So I didn't read it in depth, the whole thing, but I did cursory, and I agree, I think it's probably better code. And but if we can do the whole package at once, where we have an opportunity to cross-check with the state and everything, and just get this fixed so Tim can solve these problems, whatever, we've got 2 or 3 bad problems.
Yeah.
I'm for, I often concur with the concept, if we're going to do it, let's get it right the first time. But this feels like a finger in the dike, and then let's get the big code package rolled in with everything else.
In that spirit, we had discussions internally about pulling this tonight. And because of the testimony you heard tonight and our internal discussions, we decided it was the right thing to do to go forward with this code package because of the time that was going to be necessary to review that entire code package and make sure it linked up properly. Those discussions were had, and this is what we've come forward with for all the reasons that we've mentioned tonight.
And to be really fair, I kept it on. And it was Justin's recommendation that we wait to make sure that we could look at the fuller package. But this really is, we're doing a delicate dance here of trying to meet the immediate needs of our constituency. We knew that we had people writing in and asking for this change. I knew that staff had struggled through some of these issues. So it's not that we don't agree. It's that we just needed a short-term fix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I just have not had the capacity to be able to go through the code in depth.
Right, right.
I really appreciate, I just want to say I really appreciate the expanded explanation, and I just want to say that I trust that you are very busy, because I know that you are, and I know that you're busy, and Justin is busy, and Layla is busy, and Tim is busy, and that we're all a little over capacity. So I don't think it was necessary to apologize, and I really appreciate how hard all of you are working, and I appreciate that the recognition that that this will come back to us, and it's not for a lack of thoughtfulness that it's not before us tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably an excellent time to point out that every time I have dealt with a business, builders and other businesses in this city in the last 2 years that have had to deal with our building department, they have said to a person that we are head and shoulders above Portland. They would so much rather work here. And I know for a fact how busy you are, so it's really extra impressive that you're able to be that much better than Portland, as busy as you are. So
Thank you. This is also perhaps a good time to mention, since it was in Budget Committee and not in this venue, that we did just approve a adjustment to the budget to increase.
Get her some help. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because that's how busy the building department is right now.
Technically, during the last budget cycle, you also approved additional FTE count. So there has been a recognition of the work that Sam's doing. I appreciate you calling it out on camera. I think she does excellent work, as does her team. But I also appreciate all of you seeing it, that we're in a new time for Milwaukie, and keeping up with some of these developments is taking a lot for staff. It's exciting and it's fun, and we're having the time of our lives, but we're a little tired.
Okay, then.
Well, so if you're saying we'll put the whole property maintenance code package on the list of things for October to discuss and to prioritize, then I can go along with this finger in the dike.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
So, and declaring an emergency, whoever makes the motion.
Okay, who's up for reading?
I'll move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending Milwaukie Municipal Code MMC 15.04.180 dangerous or unsafe buildings and declaring an emergency.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded for first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending Milwaukie Municipal Code MMC 15.04.180 dangerous or unsafe buildings and declare an emergency. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Rhoda?
That was an
Yes, I
aye.
said aye.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I was just backward.
It passes unanimously. Ms. Ober, would you please read the ordinance by title only twice?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending Milwaukie Municipal Code, MMC 15.04.180, dangerous or unsafe buildings, as declared for an emergency?
And declaring
And
an
declaring it an emergency. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending Milwaukie Municipal Code, MMC 15.04.180, dangerous or unsafe buildings, and declaring an emergency.
Ms. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Council President Faulkner,
Aye.
Councilor Beatty,
Aye.
Councilor Parks,
Aye.
Councilor Heisey,
Aye.
Mayor Gamba.
Aye.
Motion carried 5-0, ordinance 2180.
All right, rock and roll, Tim.
I just gave you more work to do.
All right, I believe we are
We have
up
2 minutes
council
to read.
reports.
Actually, 4.
Auctioneer's voice. That clock's
Auctioneer's
wrong.
voice.
Swoosh. The Milwaukie Arts Committee once again invites the community to create scarecrows for its annual scarecrow contest at City Hall. Winners of the contest, which are selected from 4 categories, will receive custom tombstones, courtesy of the Davis Graveyard, and gift cards to local businesses. To enter the contest, reserve and pick up a stand at City Hall by Monday, September 30th. Completed scarecrows must then be submitted by Monday, October 7th, along with the completed entry form. Check the city website for more information. The National Council on Aging's Fall Prevention Awareness Day is on September 22nd. In support, Providence experts will offer fall risk awareness classes throughout Oregon. Milwaukie will host a class on Friday, September 20th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Milwaukie Center. The next First Friday event is on October 4th from 4 to 5 p.m. Come downtown and enjoy the festivities. Check the city website and the First Friday Facebook page for more details over the next few weeks. Volunteer to help clean up a treasured natural area near Milwaukie called Tideman Johnson Park on Saturday, October 5th from 9 a.m. to noon. The park is located at Southeast 37th Avenue and Southeast Tenino Street. Refreshments and work tools are provided at these monthly work parties. Join the Davis Graveyard on Sunday, October 13th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for their annual open house block party. This is the only time that they allow the public onto the property to view the props up close. Please keep in mind that Southeast 43rd Avenue is closed for this event from Johnson Creek Boulevard to Roswell Street. Save the date and join the Milwaukie Tree Board, city staff, and other volunteers to celebrate Arbor Day on Saturday, October 19th from 10 a.m. to noon at the city's Johnson Creek building. Volunteers will plant trees and participate in other fun tree-themed activities. Milwaukee's downtown businesses once again invite the community to its annual downtown trick-or-treating event on Saturday, October 26th from 2 to 5 p.m. This is a great opportunity to explore downtown with the entire family while gathering lots of treats along the way. Lastly, join the Davis Graveyard on Thursday, October 31st from 5 to 10 p.m., their Halloween night block party. Once again, keep in mind that Southeast 43rd Avenue will be closed for the event from Southeast Johnson Creek Boulevard to Southeast Roswell Street. For more information about each of the events mentioned, please visit the city's homepage at www.milwaukieoregon.gov.
And just a quick reminder, climate strike.
Sorry. Keep talking.
Go.
Quick reminder, Global Climate Strike is Friday, September 20th, this coming Friday. If you would like to join people locally, the Rex Putnam students are gathering at 8:45 a.m. Adults are not allowed on campus, but we will have some folks who are gathering just on the edge of campus, and we'll go with them to the big event that is happening at Portland City Hall beginning at 10:30. The march is beginning at 11:30 from City Hall to OMSI, where there will be a fair. Everyone is invited to support the kids in this work. Thank you.
I have one thing. Just to declare it on
she's
air.
doing this just so she doesn't have to buy
This is actually, you'll like this. You'll like this. You'll like this. This is to declare that a majority of council may be meeting up after our meeting tonight. And if that occurs, we'll be meeting at Cha-Cha-Cha's. So if any member of the public wants to join us, they are welcome to, and there will be no business conducted or discussed at the meeting.
Definitely not. Well, now I don't have to because we have a commitment. So we can chat.
I am committing. I am committing to that.
I'll move to adjourn. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned. Good job.